The Psalms of the sons of Korah, that's Psalms 42 through 49, really form a group, and I think they need to be understood in a broader historical context. It's my belief that these Psalms very likely came out of this period of time around 700 BC. This was a period of time when the Assyrian Empire to the north of Israel made several incursions into Israel and Judah. And the first of these Psalms, Psalm 42, 43, we've already covered, reflected this person in exile, a person who was far from God, who remembered going to the temple, but now was in a foreign land. Well, Psalm 44 is a communal lament that suggests the entire nation was mourning, was grieving the loss due to a slaughter in battle. And that's what this psalm is going to be about. So I think it probably came in this period of Israel's history where it really felt like this could be the end of everything. This is just a map of the Assyrian Empire, the orange color there, just indicating several deportations that took place as the Assyrian Empire made its incursions into the land, carried away captives, and exacted tributes. And one of the most remarkable of these, memorable because we have great archaeological remains of this, is the invasion of 701 BC, where the Assyrian army besieged Lachish and then Jerusalem. This is the site at Tel Lachish. This is very well documented. It's a very large town for its time, and the picture here is of the siege ramp. So all of this material was moved in to build a ramp to breach the walls with battering rams. And this you can find is a relief from Nineveh. It's in the British Museum, and it shows the captives from Judah being led away in chains. This shows them bowing down before Sennacherib, and this shows some of them being impaled upon spikes. So this was a terrible time in Israel's history, and it's not surprising that this psalm would come out of such a time. Key word in this psalm is the word slaughter. It begins in the first of four movements with the psalmist praising God for his presence and his victorious power that they experienced in the past. It seems to be the voice of the king, perhaps, speaking here as he remembers the goodness of God and his power and the victories of the past. But then we move to the second movement, and there is a statement of defeat. You've rejected us. You've disgraced us. You've made us turn back from the foes. And this entire stanza just describes their utter loss. They have been made to be like sheep for slaughter, scattered among the nations. We move to the third movement, and it is a plea of innocence. It's a lack of understanding here on the part of the psalmist. Like, why? Why has this happened? We have been faithful to you. And indeed, this was during the time of Hezekiah, who was a fairly good king of Judah, in which there was a return to faith. And so it just didn't make sense. And yet there is this verse 22 that I want to highlight because it's quoted in the New Testament. Yet for your sake we are killed all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. So the psalmist is trying to make sense of this, and yet acknowledging it just feels like you have abandoned us and we are being slaughtered like sheep. Well, Paul picks up on this verse and applies it in Romans 8 in this amazing chapter about the Spirit of God, the salvation of God, His presence with us. And essentially, Paul is reminding us that even though we are, as Christians, we are martyred, we are killed, we are persecuted, we suffer for our faith, this is how we triumph. This is how we win. There's nothing that can separate us from God's love. If you kill us, we still win. We still win. So that's the good news that comes out of this psalm. The psalm will conclude with a fourth movement of request for help, for God to wake up and to come to their rescue and come to their help. I think this prayer today for us is a great example of how we could pray for the persecuted church that truly is living out this psalm. It is a prayer that we can pray when we feel like we are suffering unjustly, to remind us that nothing can separate us from God's love. We go from a psalm of slaughter and loss and questions to a wedding psalm, Psalm 45. So the mood's going to change quite a bit. This is classified as a royal psalm, and it's the occasion of the wedding of the king. Now, I want to show you the structure of the psalm. It begins and ends with a statement about the writer. That's the A part that frames it. And then we move to the king's excellence and the king's dynasty, which seems to be a B part that kind of summarizes some things about the king. And then we have, as customary at a wedding, exhortations, words of instruction to the king, and then instruction to the bride. And then we have, corresponding to each of those instructions, the glory of each of them, of the king and of the bride. Let's take a closer look. In the first stanza, we know that this is a wedding song and that the writer is proud of his work. He's describing the groom here, the king, as very handsome, as a gracious and eloquent speaker. He's a great military leader. And look at this. He marches for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness. Meekness is a little surprising from a king, but gentleness under control. This is a genuinely good leader. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. I just would note here that even though the psalmist is addressing the king, sometimes the word God, Elohim in Hebrew, was used to address kings, perhaps because of their very special relationship with God. They were a mighty one. That's the literal meaning of Elohim, and the king was certainly a mighty one. Something else about the psalm is its use of sensual language. And by that, I mean the senses. We have the fragrance of myrrh and aloes and cassia. We have the music from the palace. We will have later described the beautiful garments. So like all weddings, this has all the things that make a wedding a special occasion. And now this brings us to the bride, to the queen, who is standing next to the king with gold from Ophir, from the south, from the Arabian Peninsula. We have gifts coming from as far away as the Phoenicians, the Tyre, the trading cities to the north. And then there is the promise in verse 16 of fruitfulness, of many children, of many princes to follow this king on the throne. But now I'd like to talk about the significance of this psalm when it comes to New Testament theology, because the writer of Hebrews says that this psalm is about Jesus, that Jesus is the king. And so if it is true that verses 6, 7, and 8 of the psalm are about Jesus, then it's also true that these other verses are about Jesus, that he speaks with grace, that he leads for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness, that he is victorious over his enemies. These things are all true of Jesus. And if that is true, then who is the bride at his right hand? None other than the church, his church. And the instructions to his church are to forget your people and your father's house, just as a bride is instructed to take a new name, to start a new family with your husband. So the church is called to forget who she was and embrace her new identity as belonging to Christ. And guess what? The king will desire your beauty, that Jesus is enamored with the church. He loves the beauty of the church. No matter what you think of the church, no matter whatever ugliness you have seen in the church, know for certain that Jesus is enthralled with the beauty of the church, and so should we be as well.